Okay, well, we are going to get going on time with own your time block, own your time, a little bit about time blocking. I picked this photo to be the cover for this class because it's like a stars spinning around an axis. This is like really long exposure. So it's actually a photo, which I think is so cool. And we're talking about time. So that's my artistic inspiration for the day. Y'all know me, I'm not super arty. Okay, so here's our agenda. This is what we're going to do in this class. We're going to talk about time blocking and managing our time. And, I have ideas to share. You guys are all like smart, productive people, so you do too. We are, all trying to become better at managing our time. And there's probably things that some of us are good at and things we're not good at and vice versa. So the more we can share, the better it will be. So we're going to talk about our biggest challenges, like, being aware of what are our challenges to time management. What tips do we have? Do we have favorite tools for managing our time? I know you guys learn best from each other. So when you can share, that helps a ton. And then different ways to like classify our time so we can get organized. And then like, why do we care so much about this? Obviously. So that's where we're going to go. And we'll just get started. Does anyone have any questions before we start, or anything specific that they want to like talk about? Any specific challenge, or just needing an hour of CE credit? Nothing. Okay. I'm in a room where I can't like see my video, which makes me sad because I like to see y'all's faces. Let's see if I can get it. Okay. Well, I don't have faces anyway. All right. Okay. So here we go. So what is your biggest time challenge? Mine, I'll go first, is doing too many things for other people that they should be doing for themselves. And I inherited that from my mom. So thanks, Mom. Acts of service is my love language. So I like to do things for people, but then it's like dumb stuff that like someone else could do. But these are different like time challenges, like social media. I put a 30-minute like limit on my social media, and 30 minutes comes fast. I hit it every day. And some days I'm like, ignore. And then most days I try to say, okay, that was enough. Spinning too many plates, you got too many things going on, you've committed yourself to too much stuff. Family, kiddos, this guy with the kids hanging off of him, some of you can identify. Being disorganized, sometimes that can cause us a huge amount of stress and really waste time. Not saying no to things, like I said, being overcommitted because you said yes to everything because you don't want to disappoint people. And then procrastination. This is one that is not a problem that I have, thank goodness. But I probably have the rest of them. So maybe not being disorganized, it depends. But they say procrastination is the enemy of success. So what do you guys find is like your biggest time challenge? Anyone?
Hi.
Hi.
I was just going to say that my issue as of late is prioritizing the wrong thing at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps learning something that is not in my best interest to learn right now because I'm not ready for it, but perhaps waiting and then kind of following a different strategy. So kind of time blocking in a way that makes sense to like my energy throughout the day, as well as like where I am in my schedule.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay, well, we're going to talk about that. That's an awesome one. Anyone who's been in probably one class with me knows where we're going to go with that one, but that's a good one. Okay. Anyone else? Biggest challenges? I mean, another big challenge for me is that I just like I've committed myself to too many things, and like that's been my lifelong problem. So one day I'll fix it, but so far that's just how I roll.
That's usually my problem too, Serene. So
yeah.
It's the same.
You want to say yes and do things, and then like you look at and it's like, oh man, we don't have a free like this day until months from now. Or when you're trying to plan like dinner with friends and you look at the calendar and you start talking about like, and it's April and you start talking about June and you feel like such a jerk, but it's just like,
yep,
your own schedule and kids' schedule. It's like, ugh. Anyway. Okay. So we all have time challenges. Anyone else have one they want to share? No. Okay. Okay. So then does anyone have what's your best time management tip? Does anyone have a favorite tip? Favorite thing that they do?
I like to create schedule for myself.
Yes.
I have to have something on a calendar all the time, including my workouts.
Love it. Yep. You got to schedule that kind of stuff. That's important. Anyone else? Mine is probably, I am very good at like understanding that I have to stop and make a plan. Right. So I call it taking inventory. My college friends used to make fun of me because when I was like in college, of course, I had like a million things going on. And I'd always be like, I'm just getting organized. And they'd be like, what are you organizing all the time? But like, if I just need to stop and like make a plan and like assess what's going on. So I'm pretty good about having the discipline to like manage my process, which helps. Anyone else? We're going to talk about tools and things you can use to help with this, but anyone else have something to share?
I'm not sure if it's helpful for other people, but I've experimented with a lot of platforms like Monday.com, and I found that the best thing that works for me personally is I have this sort of this like annual roadmap that I track on Excel, and I kind of break down everything by year, quarter, month, weekday.
Love it.
I write down all my dailies in like a paper sort of planner. And I make sure that at the very least, I'm getting my three priorities every single day off my list, no matter what they are. And then everything else that comes is like a bonus.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Yes. Having a plan and kind of like a roadmap for yourself is nice, because then you don't have to like think about what you're supposed to be doing. It's like right there. But also the 3 things I love too. That's a Jack Canfield. He calls it 5 things, but having these are the things that must happen today. I do that with my lists. I have like an online list, but then I have like a written list so that I like when I'm walking around, and like the things on the right are the things that like must happen today. So everyone has their own. There's not going to be any like, sorry guys, I wish I was unlocking the secret to life here, but there's not. We're just going to like talk about things, and hopefully you'll pick up like one little nugget. Like Adelaide just said Monday.com, and that some of you guys may go look at that and then be like, oh, this will help me. So anyway, one thing, Lauren, I'm not watching the chat, so if you can watch it for me, that would be awesome.
I definitely will.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, lady. Okay, so these are the tips we're going to walk through for like owning your time, right? You plan your personal time first, work without distraction, classify your items that you have to do. Like I said, I just put the really urgent ones on the right side of my list. Very, very fancy. Create a weekly calendar, prep yourself on a weekly and daily basis. And obviously, hopefully you have bigger goals, and we're doing, we do it on a quarterly basis and guaranteed goals, and then a yearly basis when we do business planning. So prep yourself. But in terms of actually executing, it's like, on a weekly and daily basis, like Adelaide has her 3 things every day. And then keep your commitments to yourself. So we're just going to walk through those. So the first one is schedule your personal time first. And that may sound weird, but I think it's really valuable. So Melanie Frank actually taught me this, and, she is a ninja trainer. And so she travels for like 5 days at a time somewhere to like teach a 4-day installation and then go home. And she says the first thing she does before she starts building her calendar, she goes in and puts like all her dates on the calendar, and then like blocks out. Like one time we were talking about doing a ninja installation, and we wanted it to be, and she suggested we do it Tuesday through Friday. And I thought that was kind of weird, because usually we do it Monday through Thursday. And this was like, we were talking about it probably either at the beginning of the year or the end of the year. And we were talking about like well into the next year. And she's like, well, that's my birthday, and I know I'm going to be here for my birthday, and so I don't want to travel. Anyway, she had it all planned, and she had scheduled her personal time first, which I think is really smart. Keep a master calendar somewhere, if it's Outlook, if it's Dayrunner. I don't know if any of you guys follow John Acuff, but he wrote the book Soundtracks, which is this like awesome mindset book. He actually has a version for teens, which is really good too. But he has, what's it called? And now I can't remember what it's called, but he has this awesome calendar that's planned by month, and it's like a big wall calendar. So we use that too, to put like important family stuff on, so we can all look at it. But just figure out how you're going to keep your master personal calendar, and do it. And, if you're doing it somewhere electronic, like make it a recurrence and help yourself. So does anyone do this? Like, it's important to have like all your family important stuff in your calendar so you can plan around it. That's an obvious one, but even also just knowing priorities, right? Put that stuff on the calendar first and work around it.
If I don't have it on the calendar, I'll forget.
It doesn't exist, is what I always say.
Exactly.
We have a, I have like my personal like online calendars, and then we share one. Matt and I share one for just us, and then we share one with the kids and their mom and stepdad. And so there's like multiple calendars, but we're always like, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Because there's just so many things to keep track of. And so for us, electronic like works best, because we can all look at it on our phones. And of course, the kids are never not with the phones in their hand. We're still training them how to use it. But Matt and I are both like psychotic about our calendars. So we're trying to impart that. It's not working so well, but we're trying. And hopefully it'll eventually sink in. Okay, so this one, the next one is work without distraction. And I think this one's super important and one we can all identify with. This is a graph of something called Parkinson's law. And this is something that just being aware of it, I think is really helpful. And I'm sure you're aware of it, even if you don't know that it's called like Parkinson's law. Eckhart Tolle says awareness is the greatest agent for change. So let's just make ourselves like aware of this idea. And so Parkinson's law is basically the concept that work expands to fill the time available for its completion. And he was like in the British Navy, and he did some analysis of like how many ships they had and how many workers that they had. And then years later, they had like reduced the number of ships, but somehow they had like more workers doing the same amount of work. And this was his conclusion, was that, the amount of work that existed in this bureaucracy, they were going to fill the time, they were going to have the work fill the time, even though they had like way more man hours because they had more employees working on less ships. So that was his observation. I think it's very true. Like another example that he gives is when, if there's I think of my mom when I tell this story, and I hope she never sees this recording, but now she's, my dad isn't around anymore, and she's like alone in their big house. And she used to be like super mom and had 4 kids and was like doing everything and crazy. And now it's just her, and she doesn't have a job. She works for my brother sometimes, but if the littlest things will take her like so long to do. Right. And Parkinson gives the example of like, an older lady who wants to write a postcard to her niece. And he's like, she'll spend an hour finding the postcard. And then she's like looking for her glasses. And then she is searching for the address. And then she spends another hour like writing it. And then she gets distracted. And then she decides whether she needs to take the umbrella to drop it in the mailbox. And then she can't find the umbrella. And it's like, eventually she gets the postcard mailed, but it took her like the whole day. And if you or I needed to mail a postcard, we would like go down, find our thing, write the note, and put it in the mail, hopefully. Right. It's just, the amount of time you have is how long the task is going to take sometimes. And I think that this is valuable when we think about allotting time for ourselves to do things. Does that make sense?
Total.
Can you guys think of any situations like this where you can like, that is totally true? Like there's a difference between being busy and being productive. And I will always say like, I always say airplane Wi-Fi is the best Wi-Fi, because usually I'm like logging on to get those like last things done, and you can work like so fast and so furiously. And it's always like just the right amount of time to get everything done that you needed to get done, because you have like no distractions on the plane and you are focused on making sure that all of these things get done. For me, I love airplane Wi-Fi. I think it's the best. But another example is like when you're going out of town and you have this like superhuman, ridiculous amount of things that get done that normally would like fill up your whole week, but you're leaving Thursday morning and like you miraculously manage to get everything done by Wednesday. That's just Parkinson's law, like in action. Like you manage to figure out how to get things done in the amount of time that you have. Do you guys like notice this in your own life? I think the going out of town example is the best, because you always get like a crazy amount of things done before you go, because they have to get done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other like places where you notice this? So I think an important thing is that an important point here is that, your growth can be unrelated to the amount of time you really spend working, which is important for us to make that connection. That was the hardest thing for me to learn in real estate when I left practicing law. And, or I would sit at my desk from like 6:30 in the morning until at least 6 at night when I got into sales, and they would be like, we did the things we needed to do and we can like check out now, because even though it's Tuesday and it's 3 o'clock, like we can stop, because guess what? On Saturday, we're going to be working. It's not about like sitting in a space and working and, filling up the space. It's like, do your work that you need to get done and move on. So anyway, so that's Parkinson's law. It's one reason that time blocking is powerful. It's because we know the amount of time we have for this task and we're going to finish it, right? So the more your mind knows, like I have 30 minutes to churn out these 3 real estate reviews, I'm going to just go do it because these are my 30 minutes. So that's what makes time blocking effective, because we get the task done in the amount of time we've given ourselves. Any questions? No. Okay. You guys are quiet. All right. So the next one is classify your tasks into do items. And Adelaide, this is what I thought of when you were sharing about, what you're spending your time on. It's a nice way, and God bless the people that have been in multiple classes with me, because I've managed to slide this slide into like every class, because I think it's so important, especially for realtors. And this is the Eisenhower matrix. Russ actually taught me about this, where things are classified as urgent or important. And then what do you do with that, right? So there's certain things in our business that are like urgent and important, and you have to do them when they come up, right? If you have a buyer that's in from out of town, like, doesn't really matter what you had scheduled, like they're here for 24 hours. And so you've got to spend that time with them, right? That's urgent and important. It has to happen. You just have to do it. If there's multiple offers and the deadline is 5 p.m., like even if you had planned on going to Pilates this afternoon, like you got to write the multiple offer, right? That's urgent and important. Like it has to happen. When your kid is sick from school, like that's not one that can be like, oh, this can wait, right? Like you got to go do it. That's urgent and important, unless you feel like you can delegate that to someone else, in which case it's urgent and not important that you specifically do that. So that's the next piece, is things that are urgent but not important. And this, I would say a lot of what happens in real estate, we think is urgent and important, but is really urgent and not important, right? Things that someone else could do that we could delegate out. So something's urgent and not important, delegate it, right? If you're going to do a pre-listing package and you want to have it delivered, like that's urgent. It needs to happen at a certain time, but you don't have to drive and go do that, right? You could farm that out. Like there's some social media that someone else could do for you. Some emails need to be responded to, but could be handled by like an assistant or transaction coordinator. Some household tasks or meal prep. Like this was for me, this is the craziest story, but when I was single and I would had someone, I was never home, right? Because I worked in Dallas and lived in Fort Worth, and it was like, and I would have someone come like once every 2 weeks and clean my house. And this sounds terrible. It makes me sound lazy. She would do my laundry for me, because that is not like my highest and best use, and I didn't have time. But then she would leave it like on my bed, and I literally would just go to sleep like under my clean clothes, which is like insane. So finally I was like, why don't I ask her if she could put those away, and I'll just pay her like a little bit more. And so I delegated that task that was urgent, so I didn't have to like sleep under my clothes, but it was not important. It was not something that I needed to do. So just think about, that's such a dumb example, but it's just like the little things in life we can do that will help us, right? So Melanie Frank told me a story once about she calls it this 12 o'clocker. And I was like, okay, explain. So she was saying she was at a open house one time with like a top producer when she was a new agent, and the real estate agent was like, her phone was ringing, and she was like, oh, that's a 12 o'clocker. And she put her phone down, and Melanie was like, this was in the morning. Melanie was like, what's a 12 o'clocker? And she's like, well, I see who this is, and I see why they're calling me, and I could stop what I'm doing right now and answer their question. She's like, but I know it's going to resolve itself. And she's like, I will call her back at when this open house is over at lunchtime at around 12 o'clock when I make my return calls, and it will probably have resolved itself. This is not something that is, even though my phone is ringing right now, like this is not an urgent issue. And so she just sat on it, which I think is really, really like a good way to think about things, especially as agents. It's like, we always want to answer our phone. We always want to be available, but sometimes if you're in the middle of something, like that's a distraction from what you're doing. And so I always tell people, one of my best tips is on your phone, changing like the auto responses for when people are calling you, from like, there's like pre-programmed ones that Apple gives you, but I have one that says, I'm in a meeting right now and I can't talk, so please text me ? Because like I would say at least 75% of the time I can like text them back and solve their problem without having to like stop and take a call, which is really, really valuable. And then another one that I have is like, I'm on the other line, but I'll call you right back, which is maybe I'm not on the other line, but it gives them the understanding that like I'm doing something, but I will call you back shortly. I feel like that implies. So I think that's a really good tip, is like changing those so that it suits like the way you do business. So that's a good one. But okay, anyway, so what's important and not urgent? This is our like most important a square, I would say here, our most important quadrant, because these are the things that are really, really important to your business. But if they don't happen, like no one's going to be like, hey, this didn't happen, right? And these are the things like all of your lead generation stuff, in your business building and the things that are good for you, like exercise. It's usually the things that like we really want to do and are important to us, but like in the grand scheme of things could get pushed aside because no one's going to be like, no one's like, Zareen, you didn't exercise today, right? Although that's very important. If it's the first thing to go, if I get like too squeezed in my day. And so to Lauren's point earlier, she puts things on her calendar, and that's the trick, is like schedule that time and work around it, because it's important and not urgent. And these are the things, you know, you can see like networking, doing business planning. Like I said, taking the time to stop and like organize, like my college friends used to make fun of me, writing your ninja notes. Like a lot of the ninja stuff is like important stuff, but not urgent stuff. And so you need to block out some time in your calendar to make those things happen and then work around that time. Is it going to be perfect? Like, no, like I said, I just used the Pilates class example. If you have a, multiple offer situation at 5 and you had planned on going to work out before, like, unfortunately, even if that's in your calendar, like writing an offer and multiple offers is urgent and important, and your Pilates class is going to go. But if it's on your calendar, hopefully you just move it to another time. Right. So that's a way of, Adelaide, like you were saying, like thinking about the tasks that come at you. And is this really urgent and important that I need to like set aside what I'm doing to like focus on this, or what I had planned really. And then the last one's things that are not urgent and not important that just need to be deleted. Cell phone games, social media, just perusing. I know we have to get on social media for business as realtors, but junk food, unproductive rabbit holes. I went to lunch with a friend a few months ago, and she told me she has 2 like little kids that are like 5 and 3. I sound like I'm judging. I'm not judging her. I'm just like in awe of her. She said sometimes she stays up until 2 or 3 in the morning on TikTok, watching TikToks. I was like, Jill, delete TikTok. Like, that's insane. Like, how do you function? It was crazy. I was like, you have got to get rid of that. But, you know, things like that, sometimes better to just delete, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make it easier for yourself. So that's the urgent and important matrix. I'll talk about it probably a million more times in our friendship and life going forward together, because I think it's really, really valuable for agents to think about the things when so many things get thrown at you all the time. Like, stop and think about, is this urgent and important? And then also stop and think about the fact that the things that are important to you, but not urgent because they don't have a deadline, need to be on your calendar and need to be scheduled. Does that make sense?
Total.
Any questions? So one thing about this, like, it's okay to have boundaries too. And I feel like we have to give agents like that reassurance, because, you know, we want to be responsive and available and all the things, but it's also okay to have boundaries. Like, I guarantee you, if there's an appraisal issue, like, your appraisal issue is not going to get solved at 10 p.m. on Thursday night. It's just not. Like, the only people that are going to be talking to you at 10 p.m. on Thursday night are the people that can't solve the problem. So that's when, like, it's okay to have a boundary and be like, I don't love it when realtors are like, if you reach me after 5 p.m., I will be available the next day. Like, I don't think that's the type of agent that we are, but I also don't think you need to be like being berated by a client or even responding to them at 11 p.m. and like at crazy hours or before a certain time in the morning. Like, it's okay to have boundaries. That actually shows that you're like taking care of yourself and you respect yourself. And I have found that like people that don't have boundaries for themselves don't have boundaries for others. And if you have a boundary for yourself, like, usually people will figure that out and stop bothering you. That sounds terrible, but hopefully that's helpful. I think agents need to hear that it's okay to like take care of yourself. Okay, so this is like an example of a time blocked week. It definitely is not intended to like be overwhelming or look scary, but it just kind of shows you what it might look like. And I know time blocking can be a 4-letter word, because it's like, oh, things come up in real estate and like we have to be available, and people roll their eyes. And I think to some extent, yes, but also like, this is not unattainable for you to like have a boundary. So does anyone time block already? Even if you're not thinking of it as time blocking, like, everyone keeps a calendar, right?
I have in my past, yes, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I use my Outlook calendar, right? And then
Mhm.
I can see like, what are the windows when this activity might work if I'm trying to schedule something. But in this calendar, and we'll walk through it, you can see there's, personal stuff is in yellow and then like work stuff is in blue. And there's a lot of windows, but we'll go through this like step by step. So one way, we were talking about classifying your tasks and your to-do items. And so one way to think about your tasks is it's either something that's like an immersive task where you have to be strategic and really think, or it's like kind of like a process task that happens regularly and you can put that in like, you call it buffer time. I think it's in the 12-week year where he called it buffer time. But anyway, it helps you kind of just think about as you're figuring out how to lay out your ideal calendar, helps you think about like, is this like something strategic? And is this like buffer time? Because you can put some buffer time in every day and then you have some strategic blocks in every day. So I did this with a group of agents from a different company once. And one of them was telling me that she realized she was getting stuck, like checking her email on her phone. And then she would like, oh, I want to read that article. And then she would like go into like this rabbit hole of like, I really want to read this Inman article. And then it was like a time waster for her. She realized that about herself. So she created a folder in her inbox to send industry emails like that. And then she would go to them at a specific time, which I think is smart. And then I had another agent, I think this one's probably more relevant to you guys, where she, you get so many emails all day, but sometimes you're doing something urgent and important and you can't like stop and look at your emails. And so when she does look, she has a folder she calls ASAP, and she moves anything that needs to be addressed, like before the end of the day or at my next available moment, she moves that into the ASAP folder so that she doesn't forget it, which I love that idea. I don't do that. I just read emails and mark them as unread, which is probably not the best way to do it. So maybe that can be like a new challenge for me. But I thought that those two ideas were really smart to like help give yourself a boost by like setting up a rule in your Outlook that will help you with that. So anyway, so back to immersive and strategic. So like strategic blocks are things that require your attention and will take longer than 15 minutes. So you need to block in your calendar to do it, right? So, if you're like, I want to revamp my listing, it's like, okay, I probably need a good like hour chunk at one point and then another hour chunk later, right? So you can put those into your calendar. Or if you're going to do a CMA, if you have a buyers that are coming out and they want to look in one different area, you're going to do the CMA. So like just give yourself 30 minutes like in your calendar so you remember that it needs to get done, right? Following up with your open house contacts. Like if you have open houses on the weekend, you need to put in like 30 minutes to an hour on Monday to like follow up with everyone, or Sunday evening or whatever you do it. Checking in with your buyers and sellers every week, as we know we should do as ninjas, like that needs to be in your calendar, right? As in a block. So you have that time. So then like a process task or buffer time is anything you can do quickly, like in less than 15 minutes, and you can just decide to do them right then, or set aside some time to do these like buffer tasks, right? Like I always return voicemails, but by the end of the day, my reach out stuff, I make sure to get it done at the end of every day. And maybe I have buffer time in the morning to get like things cleaned up. And then I have it again at the end of the day. But if that time is in your calendar, that you're not going to need to stop in the middle of the day and like get distracted and go do it because you built in the time to do those items, right? So just a way, this may not be valuable for you, it may be valuable for you, but just a way to like think about your time. This is like one of my favorite. I've probably talked to you about this slide, but not ever actually shown it to you. And it's built into this class. This is why, but it makes me laugh every time. Because it's like he's running away from like the thing he's been putting off for weeks that wouldn't take longer than 15 minutes to complete. So does anyone have an example of this? I have like multiple examples. Like for me, I have clothes like that I put on the side of my bathtub that I haven't hung up yet, either because the laundry got done and it didn't get hung up, or I wore it for like an hour and it's not dirty. And so I just put them on the side of my bathtub, and then my bathtub like grows and grows. And literally when I do it, it takes like 10 minutes max, but I just put it off. I can't do it. Or like when the dishes stack up in the sink, that's another good example. Or recently we had, at Momentous, we do like these closing gifts for clients or whatever. We needed to order more. And it literally was like 2 emails that took like 5 minutes total back and forth. But for whatever reason, it was like, oh, I don't have time to do that. It was like so dumb. So just sometimes you just got to do the things you got to do, right? And that's what running away from this little bear is. It makes me laugh. Does anyone have an example of that for them to make me feel better?
I have plenty of those examples, but I won't share them.
It
It has anything to do with
you don't talk about your
housework.
dirty clothes. Yeah, fair. Yeah, it's like the little things. It's like, I'm just going to stop and do this and I'll feel so much better. And it takes like 10 minutes. So anyway, I always think that guy's so funny. Okay. So keeping track of your tasks. How do you guys, we're talking about classifying our tasks. How do you keep track? I use To Do, which because it's tied to Outlook and it's a Microsoft product and there's an app, which is great. It's in my phone, so I can always just add things to my to-do list, my to-do. And then also in to-do, if you flag an email, it'll put it in to-do automatically for you in your Outlook, which for me is like genius. So I use Outlook to-do. That was one of my goals. Actually, I think last year when we did guaranteed goals, it was to like figure it out. And I figured it out and it's been like a game changer for me. But we have an agent that uses, there's a similar app called Things to keep track. I used to use a note in my iPhone before I started using To Do. Some people use Post-its. I use, I take my online version and make like a daily one in writing. What do you guys use? Ninja Planner? How do you keep track of like everything you have to do as a realtor when there are so many different deals and different things going on? Like, what does that look like for you?
Well, I'm not a realtor, but this is Sherry. I have a notebook that every conversation I have a color code system. So if there's an action item for me, it gets a red circle. So then I can go back through the notebook and check off things as they're completed.
I love that. I love some color coding. That's awesome.
Hey, Zareen, I'm old school. I still keep a desk calendar and like one I tote around, but I sync it with my phone calendar too.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I got you. I put day planner in there because some people are like for sure paper people. Absolutely. Spiral notebook. That's awesome. Thank you, Jason. Anyone else? Anyone have a genius tip? Adelaide mentioned Monday.com, or she has a spreadsheet, which sounds really awesome.
Oh, my spreadsheet's so in depth, but it's mostly business related. So whether that be related to real estate or marketing, but then if it's anything to do with like a whole unknown category, I just put it in the reminders app on my phone. Then I've got different reminders for each category. So like I've got, like if it's a packing list, I've got a packing list. If it's a grocery list, I've got a grocery list, and it's all kind of compiled into one app. Yes. And then it's color coded. So that's really, really helpful because I've got also a real estate list of like to-dos for that day or that week. I think you
use the reminders app in your phone. That's a good one.
Well, speaking of that, I think I've just got too many things to keep track of in different areas, and that's sometimes.
Yeah. It can be challenging. That's why we're going to talk about the next one, which was actually like a good intro. But so again, this is looking back, then we'll revisit this calendar and you can see, there's buffer time at the beginning and the end of every day. And then these were process tasks, right? So your strategic block is here, you have an immersive task here, strategic block, you're prepping for your buyer on the weekends, give yourself some time chunks there. And you can see here, this calendar specifically, this agent like takes Wednesdays off. And I mean, is that always going to work? No, but is it nice to give yourself a day in the middle of the week so you always have like availability for doctor's appointments or things like that? Like, yes, especially when agents work on Saturdays and Sundays, like you need to give yourself some time off. So I had an agent tell me she did this once, and I think it was like really, really wise. You try to block that time out. And one of our agents, our top producers, was after COVID was telling me how she was actually grateful for COVID because it helped her have some conversations where she was able to have better boundaries about like meeting inspectors and things like that. And she was like, if the inspector's like, I'm available Wednesday or Thursday, she could say to this client, well, I can't be there on Wednesday because I have an appointment, but I could be there on Thursday. And then the client can choose, like, is it important for me to be there in person? Or if so, let's do Thursday. If it's not, then let's do Wednesday. Because you can still provide service to the client without physically being there, right? A lot of times it's just a function of protecting the time that you've set aside for yourself or for something else. Does that make sense? That wasn't the best explanation, but you can still offer service without having to physically be 100% present in person all the time. Can you be totally absent and never see them? Like, no, but can you like pick your times and have some boundaries? Absolutely. Okay. So, to Adelaide's point, when you have so many different things going on, like prepping yourself on a daily and weekly basis, I think is super important. I call it getting organized or like taking inventory or whatever. But, for every minute you spend in organizing, an hour is earned, says Benjamin Franklin, which I love. You just have to stop and like assess. You can see in this on Sundays, there's, your weekly review and prep. You're either doing it during the open house or after the open house and saying, okay, what do I have going on the next week? And how do I like make all of this stuff work? And then you're doing it every day. You can see in green, your daily prep, just for 15 or 20 minutes, like sit down, look at your list, like organize it. It probably doesn't take even that long. So, prepping yourself is super, super important. And, when we do guaranteed goals, at the beginning, when we choose our goal and we break it down into steps, that's like the ultimate prep, because we're doing a quarter's worth of prep for this goal, like all at once. It's hard to do. That's probably the hardest part of the whole thing, I think, other than finding the time to do it. But taking what needs to get done and breaking it into steps, such a valuable exercise, because as we are so busy, to just know what it is you need to do and see it there versus having to like figure out what it is that you need to do. It's just so valuable. So, that's the value there, is just stopping to prep yourself. So then, how do you build a sample week like this? And like I said, we're going to start with our personal stuff. Maybe you do carpool, maybe you have sports practice that you're committed to, like whatever, every week there's going to be games or multiple games or whatever. And you want to take Wednesdays off, or you have doctor's appointment, like make sure your personal stuff is in there first. And then, then you build in, work events that are happening, right? Like I have consistent meetings every Wednesday morning. So that's in my calendar, and every Thursday at this time, and every two. So you put those things into your calendar, right? The things that you can't really work that are like scheduled and are happening. And then you can start to see like, these are the holes in my schedule that I can fill up with the things that I need to do. If it's buyer showings, if it's prepping, for my buyer that's coming, if it's, going to that listing presentation, then I need to kind of prep for the listing presentation. You kind of can like back into what needs to happen there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Look at your urgent and important items. And obviously they're going to go on the calendar, and then always look at your important and non-urgent items and put them on your calendar, just as if they were an urgent and important item that like is already going to happen, like put them on the calendar so that they're going to happen. Right? Any questions? Okay. All right. So then the last one is keep your commitments to yourself. And this is like the most basic tip, but it's also like the hardest tip, because like we said, like there goes Pilates class, or there goes this, like the things that you wanted to do, like keeping your commitments to yourself is, it's got two like sides to it. It's keeping the commitments to yourself that you put on your calendar, but it's also like keeping commitments to yourself to committing to putting things on your calendar. Like if you really, really want to feel better, be more healthy, like there's things that you have to do, and you have to honor yourself and commit to it, right? Too. So, to be responsible, they say you keep your commitments to others, but to become successful, you keep your commitments to yourself, right? Because those are the things that are important to you, that will make you feel like you're a success if you're achieving them. So, stopping to take the time to like make yourself better or make your processes better is hard, but it's also going to help you like show up better for everyone else, right? In everything you do. So, when we do guaranteed goals, we know that making goals for ourselves is important. Writing them down is important. Sharing it with others and having some accountability there is like the most important to actual success. Like your likelihood of achieving it is so much higher. So, just committing to do it, I think is is it's the hardest thing, I think, probably, is deciding that the things that are important to you, like, should stay on the calendar and get the time, right? Versus just responding to what other people need or need you to do. Any questions, any comments about that? No? Okay. So tips for owning your time, just to revisit, plan your personal time first, work without distraction, classify your tasks. So, are they urgent or are they important? Do I need a bunch of time to do this, or can I do this all at once with a bunch of other little tasks? Create a weekly calendar for yourself. And then at least, obviously, like I said, in guaranteed goals, we talk about, we do business planning where we have year-long goals, and then in guaranteed goals, we like take those and just pick a few to focus on. So those are like larger picture, but in terms of just a day-to-day time management, you got to prep yourself every week and every day to know what you got to do, right? Adelaide picks her 3 things every day, which is awesome. And then, keep your commitments to yourself, which I think is probably the hardest part. So, the question is like, what small change can you make to help own your time better? Like, is anyone going to like walk out of here with like a perfect plan for themselves? Like, no, but is there one little thing we can do to like help us plan better? That's the question. James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, who's like my favorite newsletter. He just came out with one today, like an hour ago. I haven't read it yet, but I saw it. He wrote Atomic Habits. He's a great Instagram follower too. He says, success is the product of daily habits, not once in a lifetime transformation. So like, what's a little change you can do to make your time management situation better? Anyone have feedback?
I saw that newsletter. I subscribe to it too. One of the things that he said that I'm trying to do myself is when I'm focused on my list of things to do, to really focus on them, because sometimes I'll be doing something, but my mind will be elsewhere. And so I won't be kind of like really investing my time into it. So when I'm kind of doing that one sort of job or responsibility that I've got, actually really being present in that moment, because otherwise it will take so much longer than it needs to if my mind's not really kind of on it.
Yes.
Really focused and intentionals become a little bit more helpful.
Yeah. Work without distraction. Amen. I did that this morning. I had to push out an email to like my guaranteed goals group, and I have been putting it off for so long because it felt like so much. And then it was quiet. I didn't have anything on my calendar. I was like, I'm just going to do it. And it took like 20 minutes. It was not hard, but having the quiet time where you really are focused makes it so much easier. And having the like we said, if I put 30 minutes on my calendar to get that done, it would get done in 30 minutes, right? So just doing it for sure. That's a good one. Anyone else? That's all I have. So I'm not going to keep you for longer than I need to. Anyone else have anything that they can contribute or help us out with? Would love to hear it. No, everyone's quiet. Okay, I want to make sure I'm going to stop the share and try to, I want to look at the chat. Sorry, I'm navigating this multiple screens. Okay. Stop the share. Look at the chat. There I am. Okay. So I have Chris, Jason, and Lauren. Is Terry there? Jason? Maybe not. I'll check in with you.
Hey, no, that was just on my computer from last time we were in here.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
that's why I changed it.
Perfect. All right. Well, then I have you 3, and I'll get that uploaded like right away. Anyone else for anything? That's all we got. Thanks for coming. Hopefully this is helpful. I mean, there's no rabbit, sadly, to pull out of our hat. I wish. The 8th day that I'm asking for in the week is not matriculating yet. So one day. All right. Okay. Well, that's all I got. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, Adelaide.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.